A big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. On the show today, we're going to be delving into a very pertinent topic. We all know for several years now that digital media has been gaining prominence along with digital behemoths such as Google and Facebook, who control close to 80% of digital media today. Most marketers over the last few years have invested money and time to understand this beast called digital. In fact, a lot of marketers who were not so convinced have also jumped onto the digital bandwagon just to ensure that they were not being tagged as old school or not being agile enough. Today, as the medium has matured and the initial euphoria has begun wearing off, marketers have slowly started internalizing and questioning their digital media strategies. Whether it be as basic as, should my brand be present on social media at all, to what role does my brand play on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or many others? Is my role as a brand to be churning content regularly, and am I receiving my due by investing in the medium? Let's also not forget that globally, the media has been under the scanner for issues such as bots, brand safety with ads being served against objectionable content, the viewability issue, and of course the issue of transparency and measurement when it comes to digital platforms. And today I'm joined by three very high-profile Indian marketers and an agency head to discuss and deliberate on whether the digital medium in the Indian context is actually reaping results, or is it more hype than anything else? On that note, let me introduce my very esteemed panel. I have with me Karthi Marshan from the Kotak Mahindra Bank. I have Mayank Shah from Parley Products, Vivek Nayer from Mahindra & Mahindra, and the odd man out, Aditya Kanthy from the DDB Mudra Group. Thank you so much for joining me, gentlemen. So can I assume that all three of you marketers who are sitting today here have all been investing, steadily on digital media, to, of course, get your hands dirty, experience what the media is, and looking at the kind of results that, you all have been reaping. All three of you have had that experience, right? Yeah. So now that it's been several years, let me start with you, Karthi.
Sure.
On the fact that, what has your experience been? I know that today many marketers are actually questioning their motive on digital media and are relooking and revising their digital strategies. What is the internal thinking going on within Kotak and you as a CMO?
Sure. So again, at Kotak, early on, circa 2011, the first digital step we took outside of our website was actually on Twitter, but we did customer service on Twitter. Sure. We didn't do either branding or lead chasing on social media at that stage. We embarrass ourselves in the boardroom regularly by having the lowest count of followers and likes because some of my competitors report it in their annual reports. But I am perversely proud of it because we've never spent any money on that.
It's organic.
Because we have a specific point of view on that in the marketing function for sure. What we have done very recently, on the back of all the reform that has happened in the financial services space, on the back of Aadhaar and all that, is that we've now built an end-to-end acquisition engine on social media, because now it's possible for me to invite you on social media and to complete the journey of getting your account opened inside your app or on the website within like minutes. So because of that, now we are over-invested in social media, because we see the ROI now. We have not seen it before this, but now we are able to, because we are able to fulfill.
I see. How about you, Mayank?
Coming from FMCG background, I guess, till about 3-4 years back, not long back in the history, I think digital was looked upon with a good amount of skepticism. But if you're talking about, the way things have shaped up in last few years, with the change in consumer, probably consumer time spent on digital and stuff like that, I think FMCG marketers are warming up to the entire thing. And in fact, as you rightly said, some of them have, even felt left out that, they didn't start early. So, as I said earlier, that in last 3-4 years, if you look at, today I would say that marketers are struggling to keep up with the pace of, marketing on digital medium compared to probably the way consumers have adapted or embraced, digital medium. So, probably consumers are far more evolved today. And probably what marketers are trying to do today is probably try and cope up with the way consumers have adapted to digital medium and ensure that they are not left out.
Fair enough. But I want to come to the question later saying, okay, but while that might be true, are they actually consuming ads is what I want to come to a little later. But how about you in terms of how you're seeing this media evolve, and do you see any demerits in this space?
I can say, Sonali, that our journey in digital and social media started about 10 years ago, and every year we have increased our involvement in digital and social media. And in fact, our worry is, are we leaving anything out? We are hungry to keep adding more and more new ways of reaching out to consumers. And our challenge is, how do we ensure that we put out relevant content which convey our brand stories on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and so on. And that really is the challenge for us.
Exactly. Let me come to you, Aditya, as
the odd one.
The odd one, and the one with a different perspective. You meet a lot of clients. Digital, of course, is a very big pie in your entire scheme of things. Do you think today from clients you are getting the conversation of, for instance, right? We get calls almost every day saying we have made this new digital campaign. What's the campaign? It's just an ad which they're placing on YouTube or they're placing on Facebook, and that's the digital campaign, right? So we've not seen any nuanced targeting in the digital space. It's essentially being looked at as another medium. So they're replacing the TV screen via YouTube or Facebook. What is your comment on how you've seen the evolution of let's say the client mindset, or for that matter, even the digital agency mindset in terms of using digital? Do you think it's time to now relook, the whole digital strategy we use in India, because we really don't know if it's working unless you think otherwise?
Yeah, I think it's my colleagues here have touched upon the core issue. There are actually four parts of what you might call digital investments. One part of it is media. The other part of it is the content you create for it. The third is the money you invest in your agency partners and your and the people that are meant to guide and create that for you. And the fourth and very, very important one, and I think that's the one that's most under-leveraged, is the work that you're doing on the technology side to design the service and the experience, right? And I think that's one of the big, exciting opportunities for marketing people, for agencies, because technology, digital, is legitimately allowing people from the so-called marketing department to guide and influence the work that's happening across the organization. I do think, though, that it comes down to that core issue, which is it starts from the consumer, it starts from how they buy, it starts from what role that particular intervention. I think one of the big problems is there's a lot of platform first thinking rather than brand and consumer journey first thinking, right? And I think if we can, between clients and agencies, start from that. What is the experience you want to create? What is the role of that platform in that? What is the problem that I'm solving for? And how am I going to measure that, right? Because that accountability, I think, is very important for all people. Vanity metrics don't hold anymore, right? Does it really matter that I have so many likes or I have so many followers, right? And I think the core metrics around brand and salience and around the buy and the conversion, to be honest with you, I don't think there's enough conversation around that, both at the agency and the client end, and in most of the categories and clients that we work with.
So I'm so glad you brought this point up, and I actually want to challenge this whole content bit that all marketers are obsessing over, because for marketers the entire life is about their own brand and their own principles and their their own deeds. But I think from a consumer point of view, who cares? So I mean, my question, let me put this out. For instance, if I'm on social media as a consumer, I mean, think of yourselves as consumers. Today, we see so many marketers pushing so much content. As a person who's on social media, which is really a networking forum with other individuals, why am I bothered about, let's say, what Kotak Mahindra is doing or Parle is doing or Mahindra is doing? So do you think somewhere...
Relevance is key. What message are you giving to whom? Is it relevant to them? So if I'm sending out content related to Mahindra Racing, I will send it to people who are interested in motorsports, right? So relevance is key. If you're doing it blindly and just broadcasting, you're screwing up. I mean, you have to be relevant to a certain audience. So you have to pick your audience very carefully.
In fact, I'd like to take this, a step back, what you said. Before, so while, of course, you need to send relevant content to the, relevant guys, more importantly, you need to first frame your objective. What do you want to do? What's your marketing objective? Why are you using digital medium? And, that partly even, touches upon what you people just, discussed earlier, wherein, See, my marketing objective is going to remain same, whether I'm going to use digital medium or I'm going to use a traditional medium like a TV or. So if my brand requires to communicate a certain thing, it has to communicate that. Only because the medium is changing, I'm not. So somewhere you will see some kind of similarity between what I'm doing on a TV and digital. If the same, creative works for both the formats or both the mediums, nothing like that. It would be wrong to replicate the same creative if it's not lending well to the digital format. That's wrong. Okay. Having said that, once you decide what's your marketing objective, and then there's typically marketing funnel where you say whether you want to really go for awareness or consideration, or you want to talk about advantage of your product, or you want to talk about some kind, you want to have bonding with your consumers or whatever, depending on where your brand is, at which stage, and what is the challenge your brand is facing in terms of marketing, you decide what you want to do. Secondly, coming to what you talked about, relevance. So when you are talking about relevance, it's like I may be saying something which, if it's completely around my brand or just talking about my brand, people will not be interested. And that's where native comes in. Okay, when you talk about native, you're trying to be part of their conversation. In fact, you are trying and, creating conversations where your brand is part of it in a very subtle way. You're being facilitator there rather than, trying and probably going and talking. That's typically not the way.
Very good to hear. But that's not what we see, as people who watch what's happening in the space. It's not something that we see very often. But,
Can
Karthi,
I quote you 2 examples of where you might have seen it otherwise?
Surprise, surprise.
For instance, I want you to, bust the myth on some of the marketing principles y'all talk so much about, whether it be at conferences or it be at festivals like Cannes or Goa Fest or whatever. Because firstly, every year the fad changes, which is, so we don't know next year or in 2018 Cannes, what will be the new buzz topics. For instance, like he's saying, content is very important. Although there is a content glut on social media today, you really don't know what is happening. A few years ago, it was all about purpose. Your brand has to have a purpose. It needs to, you need to like bond with your customer. I don't know if the customer is thinking so much, to be honest. So maybe I'm wrong, but this is just a point of view. So can I have your opinion on, on digital, especially on Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter? If there's so much of content, you becoming, publishers of sorts, is really working for you?
We've been experimenting, small experiments, but we've been very conscious about the fad of the year. So whenever, whether it's publishers or agencies who try to sell us some of that snake oil, we've been very conservative, very cynical. Having said that, let me say that what we have attempted to do with digital in the content space has been only brand, customer, and environment relevant. So I'll give you one example. Since you don't want quoting examples, I'll have to give you one. Demonetization happened November 8. Within a week of that, we put a man on a motorcycle and asked him to travel around India with no cash whatsoever, with only payment tools that we had enabled him with, which naturally were Kotak. And he was a video documentary maker who was putting it out on YouTube and on all social media every single day. And the metrics are out there for you to go check out anytime you like. Bollywood, politics, and cricket will always be relevant to the customer in this country. None of it is relevant to most brands. You get to be in the conversation if you're raising that subject, but I'm damned if I'm wasting my time discussing it, because I have no locus standi for it.
Absolutely.
Star TV may have a locus standi for it.
Yeah.
I have none, so I'm not wasting my time and money doing either of these 3 things. But when a demonetization event happens, it's bang on for me. I'm the best guy to be having that conversation with the customer, because she's asking questions, saying, what the hell am I to do about cash now? How can I live without cash? All of that opportunity is presenting itself.
Bottom line is, it is selling more.
So I think it's a little more complicated.
Are you selling your products more?
No, is that the objective? That's what I say.
That's not the
in
objective.
Your funnel, in
You're
your
saying in
funnel,
digital,
are you
that's not the
talking about?
objective.
No,
May not be
I'm
for
not
this
saying
particular
that.
thing.
No,
See,
generally I'm
if
asking
it's a
for
sales
marketing.
funnel, if you're talking about selling,
Leads.
then you need to do a very different kind of digital campaign. If we are talking about content, that's not meant for selling. Content is not. It's to build your brand equity. Okay, so I was saying advocacy, which is, the pinnacle of it. If you are talking about advocacy, you want your brand to be, talked about. People should talk about your brand, saying that this is the brand that talks about it. If you stand for something and there's synergy, it makes sense. that generates advocacy. Then people will talk about your brand. There is buzz that's around your brand, which will result in people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, all
Right,
of you,
yeah.
right? People only talk about brands when brands mess up big time.
Yeah.
Brands are trending. For instance, the most recent example that's top of mind is Indigo. I mean, brands are only trending when there is a big mess up these days. And, you know, today as customers, we have a way to vent it out that will reach many people. But till date, whenever you've seen a brand trending because it did a good job, I mean, that's paid trending. You can pay the medium and, you know, you can get yourself trending. But actual trending, mass trending happens when you are not doing a good job. So question to you, do you, for instance, without naming any brand, do you see brands, you know, they can use their presence on social media to solve issues of customers? Because most customers, the first thing they do now is, okay, it's not working out to the call center executive, okay, I'll tweet about it or I'll put it on Facebook. That's the first, they hit the brand there. How many brands do you see can manage to reduce the response time and please that aggrieved customer? Do you see Indian brands doing that?
So, yeah, I think they are. I think there are. So I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to take your provocation, take that bait, and make that point about content because I think it's a serious one, right? One of the problems, I think, the challenges on the client and agency and with digital technologies is that there's a danger in it amplifying some of the fundamental flaws of how marketers think, which is, I think, the point you were hinting at, which is we tend to think that people care much more deeply about our brands than they really do, or care much more about the content we put out than they actually do. And I think that's a real problem. And I think part of it is because of the misselling that's happened on digital, where the assumption that something is fast and cheap and that you can do a lot of it and that you can measure everything means you will do it.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's a fundamental trap. It is designed, we are, as marketing people, as agencies, we're designed to feel happy about doing more, producing a lot, chasing the next shiny big new thing. And I think that's a very serious issue. And you've called it out. And in defense of some marketers, particularly those around the table, I think they're obviously discerning about those choices that they make. But there are many who are not.
Sure.
There are many who produce a lot, mainly because it is easy to do, it's quick, and it's cheap. And those are
And it's
awful
relevant.
reasons. Right? But if they are relevant, if it is relevant,
whole
it should
game is
work.
relevant.
Right?
Don't remove your hat, remove
Right?
the
And
M&M
I
hat.
think that's a fair call out. To the second point you're making about whether I think there are more than enough marketers who are taking social media in the form that you have said very seriously, right? So whether it's auto companies who do think of that, like Karthi said, even for him, the first foray into Twitter was in the customer service space. I think auto companies do that a lot. They are, in fact, I know for media company that has invested a lot of time and energy in only listening.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Our brands
and it
doing that,
matters
exactly.
because
And response management as well.
Correct. Because in their case, that listening, for example, leads to two really important decisions. One has to do with service. Which parts of the country is something not showing up in, right? So there's a distribution angle to that and a
there's
check
a
on
failure.
that. Or there's failure.
There's a
But the
gap
other is very interesting, which is in terms of content development as well. Their own plot lines. Saying, how are people reacting to the stories as they put it out? And in real time, getting that almost like market research. Now, that has nothing to do with the creation of content, right? But there are more than enough sophisticated marketers who've thought deeply enough about what role these platforms play in the larger scheme of their business and brand plans, and are doing things that I think are defy some of the assumptions around how there's a lot of nonsense, basically.
Sonali, the point I'm making is any industry you're in, if you're in social media and you're active and you're listening and you have a response mechanism,
Those are a lot of
any
ifs.
industry.
Those are a lot of ifs.
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of BS content being produced by a lot of agencies and a lot of clients are getting conned. No debate with that. No brand loyalty. Let me take a really old school term, brand loyalty. There is no reason for a customer to be loyal to a brand.
Absolutely.
Only the brand has to be loyal to the customer. Have you seen an employer be loyal to an employee? Why the hell should an employee be loyal to an employer either? Because come downtimes, downsizing is happening. Where is that loyalty actually traded for? So it's between the power equation, right? So a brand is the one who has to be loyal to the customer. What do we do to be loyal to our customers is the only question that we need to be asking. In that same tone, the customer, whether she does like or follow or whatever other vanity metric we want, all of it is a waste of our time. On top of that, we are right now actually examining in the space of content, what is relevant content, what is its value to a brand. There is a school of thought that's saying that creating lots of content, particularly proliferating on social media, if it's relevant to you, tunes up your SEO juice. We are examining that. Jury's out. I don't have an answer today, so I am not able to comment either way.
Sure.
But we have started to examine whether there is any truth in that.
Okay.
Net of that, I'll say that we're able to get leads, we're able to convert into business. Business is good. We're not complaining.
I think the real trick is for people who are, when you're in an acquisition mode, for people who are not in the category, people who are not necessarily expressing an interest in you, the assumption that they are interested in you, right? And whatever it is that you're saying, I think is the assumption that needs to be tested for content. I think that's the real test, to say that, are we doing a lot of irrelevant stuff there, right? And just because we want to say it, are people who have nothing to do with us and not interested in us actually going to chase, right? But with existing customers, with people who are actively buying, I think there's merit really in the argument for volume of content.
And in fact, I think marketers today are smart enough to know that you push content to people who are not interested in that content, you are actually harming your brand.
I'm sorry to play devil's advocate, but who's advising you? Your digital agency? But my question is, how many of you all have complete trust with your digital agencies who today, or digital counterparts, agency counterparts who are digital, where, today everybody's margins are, better and, much more attractive when you push a digital campaign?
It has to make
this
sense.
industry hasn't matured to the point where we have independent third-party advice skills and expertise, right? So your best tool is to make small experiments, set a baseline, and then keep flirting. And then whichever entity you partner with who's able to deliver higher than that baseline, you continue to stay in bed with them. The others you part way with. And there is no
process.
Loyalty even in that. So it's complete promiscuity. And I actually advocate and say that sleep with everybody, because you don't know everyone's learning at your expense anyway. You might have to learn at theirs.
That's true.
That's the way we approach it.
Probably what you can also do is you can look at multiple agencies. So your creative or strategic agency for your digital has to be different than your media buying agency. Okay, that's why you can take care of that. Okay, once you segregate those functions, and then there is your media owners. Okay, if these three entities are kept at arm's length, then I think you can probably somewhere at least ensure that they will not push you into something that's not really fruitful for you or not really worth for your brand.
I'd like to close this discussion. Let me come to you. How do you see, we're sitting in 2017, and how do you see the digital landscape change in terms of the approach marketers will take to it in the foreseeable future, not the long term, but in the foreseeable future? Do you continue to see the content glut? Do you continue to see, social media being used in the traditional means, or do you see any,
so I think
prolific changes?
Okay, so there are a few things here, right?
Yeah.
And to the point we had earlier, and it's a shame that Karthi doesn't see agencies as third parties, right? Unfortunately, and I think it's a statement on the agency business, right? That we're not able to do that. But my hope is that long-term partnerships between clients and marketers and agencies allow us to make better choices, right? Smarter choices that are hopefully more strategic in nature. There is a lot of supply-side pressure. There is at the expense of upsetting some of my friends who are media owners. There is a lot of supply-side pressure, right? From a valuation point of view, from an investor point of view, that's where all the hype comes from. That's where marketers get seduced into trying things because it seems fashionable to do so.
Yeah.
But I think the key and my hope is that we engage in deeper conversations to solve problems that really matter and to create kind of long-term value in the form of the brand work that you do, because ultimately that's why brands matter, to help you extract a premium, hopefully get repeat buying consistently over long term, and that the digital definitely has a role to play in that journey, right? But also at the buy end, right, which is to actually influence the actual decision to buy a particular brand. And I think that those two ends is where all the interesting work or of applying digital technologies is. Are we as agencies and clients discussing those things deeply
Absolutely.
enough? I don't think so. And I think that's it's a pressure on us to bring that conversation to clients and to have clients challenge us, right, to do more than content, right? Will the content stuff happen? Of course it will. And there will be good agencies and there will be crappy agencies and there will be good marketers who make great choices and those that don't. And I think that's very much part and parcel of what you will see playing out. But I really do hope that the stuff outside of that, around kind of more meaningful business building, brand building stuff and kind of closing the sale and pushing share.
Sure.
I daily hope that happens more and more deeply over the next 5 years.
I also believe that someday what we think of as advertising will also die.
We hope so.
Because we'll get to a point where the prospect will put her hand up and say, I'm interested.
You'd really love
And that's
to
the only
listen.
time when you'll be able to have a real conversation. And all the rest of it is going to be ether. And we will all have to relearn.
$1,000,000
that
question
is.
is when all this will happen.
Yeah,
You
it's,
know,
it's
I
a
mean-
long time away.
We still have.
It's a long time away only for India because this country is a time warp.
Sure.
This country lives in the 1800s as well as in the 22nd century at the same time.
So the beautiful thing about India is you have millions of people on reading newspapers, millions watching television, millions on social media. So I don't see all this happening in the short term, at least, not in the next 2-3 years.
Not far away from the time when you would have IoT and when, consumers would be primarily on an autopilot mode where they would not even be, probably consciously taking decisions in day-to-day life. So if my refrigerator is stocked out of something or, is below your minimum stock level or your grocery, cupboard is below minimum stock level, it will automatically order a e-grocer and will be replenished, where I would not even be getting into. Today I am going to a organized retail, probably looking at 4 brands, which is a touch point for me where I can do something to get that consumer or, probably attract that consumer. Tomorrow I'm not even going to. It's going to be far more difficult for me as a marketeer or any marketeer, to then convert that consumer from one brand to another or net that consumer from one brand to another. He would primarily be on autopilot mode. That would be the
Advantage
digital
Amazon.
life.
But the one thing that is sure is that the rate of change in future is going to be faster than what it was in the past. So that I think is clear. But how much?
But lucky for
is
all of
5
you
years,
that we
10
live in
years? We
India.
don't
And on that note, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on Brand Equity and having this very interesting debate. And hopefully we'll see better content and just better utilization of digital media from Indian marketers.
Let's talk TV next time.